Hi, everybody. Just wanted to pop in here real quick before the episode starts to give a little, not a disclaimer, more of just a funny note before this podcast starts. So as you may or may not know, when I do an episode with a guest, I will generally do the intro and outro portion separately from the recording that I do with that person. And that's the case for this episode too. It was a great time. I will say though that look, okay, so as you know, this episode is about Invasion 2001, the pay-per-view, and the Invasion was a notoriously disastrous storyline in a lot of people's eyes. So it's only fitting for this podcast episode of the Apron Pump to be somewhat of it's not disaster, but it's just it's a quirky one, let me tell you. There were a few audio issues, which I'll touch on in a few minutes, but it's still very listenable and still very good. A great time between me and my guest today. But what I wanted to get on here real quick and mention is that my intro and outro for this episode. So last Friday, I was home alone. My girlfriend was out with her family, and I was just, by myself. And I was like, you know what I think I'm going to do tonight? I think I'm going to try that new apple Rita recipe that The Rock posted on his Instagram. And I had all the ingredients. I made it, and boy, howdy, was it delicious. So I had several apple Ritas. And just hanging out by myself at home, watching some wrestling, playing some video games, nothing crazy. And then it's all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. And I'm like, you know what I want to do right now? I want to record an intro and an outro for my episode this week. So I hop on here, I record it, and as I'm recording it, I'm like, man, hardest part of the ring, you sound absolutely delicious on this mic. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this intro or outro. Perfect. Throw it out, we're ready. So that was Friday night. And I listened to it on Sunday night, and I was like, oh no. It is very, very clear that I have many, many tequilas inside of me as I'm speaking. And I just wanted to mention that out front because I didn't want you guys to think I was just low energy or that I was losing passion for what I was doing because that is not the case. I am just quite inebriated and sleepy. So I feel I'm going to leave it in, but I just want to come out and say why I sound so ridiculous in the beginning. So with that, let's get to it. What's up, everybody? Hardest part of the ring is here again with another delicious, tasty, chewy, spicy apron bump. Ooh, doggy, what a fucking pay-per-view we have for you today. Everybody's favorite WWE, WWF storyline of all time. That's right. Shut the fuck up, cat. The Invasion. As my cat invades the podcast, we're all having fun here. Anyways, but yes, WWF Invasion 2001. I guess the only Invasion pay-per-view, but fuck it. Just for the sake of consistency, WWF Invasion 2001 is the review that we have for you today. Lots to get into. We are fresh off of King of the Ring 2001. That show, you saw Edge win the King of the Ring tournament. You saw Stone Cold retain his title against Benoit and Jericho. What the fuck else you got? Oh, you got that legendary legendary street fight between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon. And all of this is fucking hilarious because we're here at Invasion, like, what, a month later, if that? And nothing that really happened at King of the Ring is, like, a factor anymore. Because, we'll get into it, but the Invasion is it's a very divisive topic. There's a lot of people that really, really hate it, and for good reason. But I feel like it maybe gets more hate than it deserves, and me and my guest today will get into that. But yeah, man, just a lot of uncertainty with what to do with WCW. If you don't know, here in 2001, we're pretty much fresh off of WCW going out of business, ECW as well. So at this point, WWF is monopolizing the wrestling industry, and all of a sudden they have all of this new talent that they have to their disposal. They don't have the Goldbergs yet. They don't have NWO. They don't have Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff, any of those guys. They don't have Sandman. They don't have Sabu, but they got, Shane Helms. They got Chavo Guerrero. They got Justin Credible. But yeah, it's just a funny time period to watch in hindsight, because as many of you may or may not know, the original plan with WCW was to create its own brand within WWF, kind of like how they had Raw and SmackDown eventually. The plan was to have a WWF brand and a WCW brand, and they tried that on Raw by main eventing the show with a WCW World Title match that consisted of a Booker T facing Buff Bagwell. And if you're not aware, that is one of the most notoriously bad main events of all time. Worth going back and watching just to hear the crowd reaction or lack of reaction to the in-ring action. But yeah, so they wanted to create its own brand, and then there were I remember all that, right? I remember the Buff Bagwell shit and all that, all the title matches that they had on Raw and SmackDown. But what I do not remember is that they were setting up angles within WCW at the time, like in anticipation of creating that own brand, that singular brand. So a lot of start and stop, a lot of just trying shit, a lot of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. But ultimately, it leads us to this Invasion, which the general arc of it, the general umbrella of this show is WWF versus the alliance of WCW and ECW. So I won't harp any longer, but I do want to mention that I had a great guest for this episode. I had Joey from The Angle podcast. You can check his podcast out on all podcast platforms. You can check out his website, theangleradio.com. And yeah, really, really fun time. I will say this dude has been traveling around the country of the United States for God knows how long in an RV. He's going to the Grand Canyon. He's in the woods. He's in Kentucky. He's in who knows. But so I mentioned this because he actually recorded this with me while he was in an RV, which was a little it wasn't terrible, but there's definitely like a consistent hum in the background, and I did all I could to kind of get rid of it. But I'm still new to this audio engineering, audio manipulation, whatever you want to call it. So I did my best to make the audio listenable. And I think it even affected my audio as well somehow. I don't know if the feedback did that or if it was just so intense that it just went through my microphone into my mouth and made me talk all shitty. But but yeah, so if it sounds a little underground, if it sounds a little alternative, if it sounds like you just put this podcast on a disc spinner and then put the can you tell I'm I'm a millennial. I'm trying to like reference a record player, but I don't know what any of the parts are called. So yeah, I'm just mentioning now, if the audio sounds kind of suspect, that is why, because this man literally just got done hunting and gathering in the woods to come be on my show. So I really appreciate him for that. But with that, let's get to it. WWF Invasion 2001 with myself and Joey from the Angle Podcast. Yeah, thank you for making the time to join me on here. I know your life's kind of busy right now, and
it's all good.
I appreciate you. Yeah, of course. So were you able to catch Invasion?
I was.
Yeah, so I asked this to everybody that comes on here, but were you actually watching live during this era?
This time, honestly, 2001, I was, how old was I? I think I was like 10 or 11 at the time.
Yeah.
And it's a different experience watching it at that age than it is now. You understand everything a little differently now. So I didn't get to watch it as a kid. I think I did here and there, but watching it as an adult, like I said, it changes the whole idea of it, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you know like all the backstage implications that were happening during this time, it really changes a lot.
Exactly, and the backstory leading up to all the events and things like that. So it's definitely a different idea now for me, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So for anybody listening that's not aware, WWF Invasion was a pay-per-view designed to be basically WWF versus the alliance of WCW and ECW. And I mean, we could do like a whole episode on just talking about the invasion and like the pitfalls of it and where they could have gone in other directions and where they went wrong. But I guess just in general, because it's kind of a divisive topic. Some people hated the invasion, some people liked it. What were your thoughts on this whole storyline just in general?
You know what? I am a big fan of storylines that we don't necessarily see all the time. When I think about the invasion angle, there's other storylines that I can see, at least in the last 10 years or so, that kind of took a similar idea. Like, for example, the Nexus coming in, kind of taking out everybody, leading up to that SummerSlam match, Nexus versus WWE. There was history kind of repeating itself in that sense. So I was a fan of the storyline. I am a fan of the storyline. I didn't understand it as much when I was younger. But there was really, in my opinion, no other way to kind of bring in another company, especially a rival company like WCW at the time, where you can kind of make everybody on the same page. So to do this and then have obviously WWE or WWF at the time kind of take the reins and then everybody kind of join together, I guess was a way to transition everybody to do that.
Yeah. The thing that fascinates me so much about this is how it's so clear that they just didn't know how to handle WCW, like the acquisition of all these new wrestlers, right? It's because I'm in the process of reading JR's book, and he goes into a lot of detail about this. A lot of it's common knowledge too, and how the original plan was to make WCW its own brand, and they tested that with that famous Booker T and Buff Bagwell match on Raw. And then I think it was Booker versus DDP on the next SmackDown.
Yep.
And one thing that I watched all the Raws and SmackDowns leading up to this, and because I remember that Buff Bagwell Booker T match, but what I do not remember is how they were kind of like setting up angles within WCW, like in preparation for that separate brand. I think it was that SmackDown after where all the WCW guys ganged up on Booker T and Shane McMahon, just beat the shit out of them and like the next show they like completely just pretended like it didn't happen.
Well, I think it was more of testing the waters to see how it worked, kind of like what we see now today with Raw Underground, where they had the Cruiserweight Hour on Raw a few years back. They kind of just test the waters to see if it's going to work. But But I don't think that's enough to base on if these guys or girls should be on TV or not. Putting on one or two matches like that, and then kind of saying, all right, well, I mean, you're taking in a different company. The fans obviously are a lot smarter today than they were back then because of social media and the internet. But they knew that there was two different companies, and they knew that WWF had acquired WCW. So it wasn't like they were just bringing in these random people.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And it's obviously a shame, with the AOL contracts being the main reason that we didn't get to see guys like Goldberg and Sting and NWO and things like that. It really I think the main thing with the invasion for me, because ultimately I don't think it was that bad, but it just had so much more potential. And I think that's really why it has such a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because literally if they would have waited like 6 months, they could have done this and it would have been amazing because you would have had, Ric Flair and Eric Bischoff, the NWO, Goldberg, maybe not Goldberg, but it just would have had a lot more talent rather than the guys that really weren't established in WCW until like the very later, leaner years.
Of course. When I look at these things, I like to kind of look at both sides of the spectrum where one is more of, I'm the fan, I want to be entertained. The second is where I look at it from a business standpoint. I understand from a business standpoint why they did it so fast. And that's because they didn't want the fans to forget these people in 6 months. You close down WCW. If you were to wait 6 months, fans might not remember all the names. I mean,
right.
You can't say who or what, who would, who wouldn't. But, from a business standpoint, they wanted to capitalize when it was hot, in a sense, and just run with it that way. But was it the best idea to do it the way they did? Probably not.
Right. Yeah.
You look back at history, you can say that about everything. So.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's the thing. We have the luxury of having hindsight on the situation, and we weren't making the decision. So I guess that's a good point. You can't really blame them for doing that. But yeah, this show in general, I don't remember a whole lot about it other than the main event and the hardcore title match, which we'll get into eventually. But yeah, this first match here, and it kind of plays into what I was talking about earlier and how they were kind of changing things on the fly.
Yep.
So we have Edge and Christian versus the team of Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. So there's no titles at play here. It's just a tag match to open the show. And the thing I find funny about it is that, Edge wins the King of the Ring. And, the weeks after, they're kind of alluding to an eventual breakup between Edge and Christian. You have Christian kind of being insecure about losing. He's trying to make excuses. Shane McMahon cost me the King of the Ring match. That's why I didn't win. Things like that. And then I almost wonder if they were planning to do this earlier, because eventually later in 2001 they would do that breakup. But it's just funny how they kind of shifted game plans on the fly. When the whole invasion storyline kind of unfolded as it did. Do you remember anything about that?
I do, and you know what? Going back to Edge and Christian, kind of teasing that breakup, I think a lot of that is done, even today or just in general, because if you look at the backstage producers or the major or the top guys, top guys backstage, they're kind of the same people who were around at that time too. You have Michael Hayes, you have Bruce Pritchard back there. So there's sort of a similar mentality backstage. So I think that was done, like I said earlier, to test the waters. Okay, we have Edge and Christian. We want to have them both in a singles run. Let's kind of test to see what the fans would think. If Edge starts gaining some success and Christian starts getting jealous, maybe we turn Edge on Christian, maybe we turn Christian on Edge. There's 100 different ideas that are behind it. And it's kind of like whatever the fans pick up on is kind of where they go, because that will get over.
Right.
But in this particular match, I honestly wasn't too familiar with the Alliance or WCW and ECW, just because one, I was really young, and two, I was at that time really only think of WWF as the mainstay. So
Yeah, same
Edge
here.
and Christian were just, you knew them.
Mm-hmm.
You knew them, you rooted for them, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, and it's because I was the same way. I actually kind of took a break from watching wrestling like around this time period, so it's all kind of fuzzy to me too. And I was always just like you. I was a WWF guy, my whole childhood because I was probably like nine or so. So I was a similar age to you when I was watching that show. And I wasn't familiar at all with Lance Storm or Mike Awesome, but and watching this match back, it was solid. I mean, it wasn't anything that you need to like go back and watch if you haven't seen this match or anything. But it was a solid opener. I always love watching Edge and Christian tag together because the thing that they do that you don't see like very often nowadays, they work as a team. Because a lot of tag team matches you'll see, even back then too, a lot of tag team matches can end up being just like a series of singles matches. If that makes any sense, it's just kind of people taking turns having one-on-one matches. But Edge and Christian in this match, there's a lot of double team moves. There's a lot of somebody ducks and then gets hit, and the other person gets hit, and then there's like that small package spot in this match where Edge is in the small package, and then Christian comes in and turns it, so Edge has the advantage. Just little things like that make me really enjoy Edge and Christian, and the tag team division was my favorite part of watching WWF back then, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. Tag team wrestling had Edge and Christian then. You brought in the Dudleys, you had the Hardy Boys. There's so many teams that were, I guess, so natural together where I feel like over the years that kind of faded away where they just put people together to create a tag team. We see that today with the Usos. Really, I don't know another tag team that are that close.
FTR.
FTR.
Yeah. There's only a few of them though, so yeah, it's hard to like think of a big list.
Yeah, you got the Young Bucks, but besides that, you need that natural ability to counter each other, and that goes beyond the ring. That goes, you have to go backstage and you guys understand each other. And there's a real relationship there. It's not just a business relationship. There's a full friendship. Chemistry is the word. Yeah. And Edge and Christian really did that. They really had that.
For sure. Both together and against each other, I think.
Now, Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, they did do well together. But back to the chemistry thing, there was no chemistry. Now, if you want to talk about Lance Storm, 2 years after this match, I'd be glad to. But at that time, I had no idea. Like, I just didn't have any. I wasn't familiar with them.
Yeah, I wasn't either, and I don't really even know if they were a team in WCW.
No.
I guess they just threw them together. But yeah, I mean, it was a solid match, passable match. Ultimately, Edge and Christian get the win here, and so it's funny. So they start the tally here because they're like it's WWF versus the Alliance, and the commentators, they're all putting over, WWF is 1-0, but it's like midway through the show, they remember that on Heat, Chavo Guerrero faced Scotty 2 Hotty, which Chavo beat him. And it's funny because going back to changing things on the fly, they kind of started adding that to the tally in the middle of the show. I don't know if that was an audible or if that was all by design.
It might have been brought in as a way to kind of highlight that match because it was on Heat. Let's go back to this match because this is what changed everything halfway through the show.
Exactly. Well, yeah, because when the main event starts, or when they get to the main event, it's all tied up.
Exactly.
So yeah, it might have been just the last minute thing they changed there, but whatever the case, it's a pretty solid match there. And a very weird transition into the next match. Earl Hebner versus Nick Patrick. Who doggy? With Mick Foley as a special guest referee. It was, look, this match wasn't put here to be a 5-star. It wasn't Macho Man versus Ric Flair. It was a spectacle. It was just not a let-up match, but it was a match designed to be entertaining and not necessarily a technical masterpiece of any sorts. And it was pretty short. But for what it was, I mean, it was more entertaining than I think it had any right to be, in my opinion. I'm not going to go and suggest that any of these guys are, extremely athletic or should be world champion or anything. But for what it was, I enjoyed it. I was entertained by it. I loved how they wrestled in their ref uniforms. I loved how they had all the refs ringside. It was just fun stuff. Earl Hebner ends up getting the win here with some sort of clothesline crossbody thing. He just kind of throws his body at Nick Patrick and ends up landing on him for the pin. That was a fun little segment here. What did you think?
You know what? Having the referees go head to head, adding Mick Foley to it, adding more of a gimmick style to it, bringing the entertainment side to it. I really liked how they included the referees. It's not something that you've seen before or you see after. It's like this is really WCW and ECW versus WWF, even down to the referees. I think this was a great way to really show the line in the middle between the companies. And then, if they can make entertainment out of it, which they did, especially Earl Hebner, great referee and great entertainer.
Oh, he's a star. Earl is a star.
And then you throw Mick Foley in there, and that just changes everything.
Exactly. Yeah, well, you always have that to fall on. But, man, watching this match really made me wish we would have gotten a Tony Schiavone versus Jim Ross match. 5 stars.
You know what? That's one thing they were missing was the announcer somewhat or something. I mean, we've seen it over the years, but it should have happened at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But so after that, we got APA versus the team of Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. So this is a champion versus champion match. APA at this point are positioned as like the locker room leaders, at least of like the jobbers, like they're the leaders of S.A. Rios and Crash Holly. But and Chuck Palumbo and O'Haire, the WCW tag team champions. What did you think of O'Haire and Palumbo, both as a team and singles? Because I think both these guys had so much more potential than they ended up reaching.
I feel like these two, especially Chuck Palumbo, because we've seen him with so many different gimmicks over the years, singles and as a tag team. We saw him with Billy and Chuck, with Billy Gunn. We've seen him. Cool. I think the last thing that he had in WWE was with the motorcycle.
Yeah, biker gimmick,
Yeah. So he was able to pull off a lot of different things and still be over, heel or face. Definitely underrated. 100.
I think so.
Definitely, I think they held him down. Back in those times, they had. I mean, not even those times. Today too, they pick who they want to be at the top. That's who they keep there. So Chuck Palumbo. Great athlete in the ring, get any kind of gimmick over. I mean, this guy had more of a flamboyant character with, like I said, Billy and Rico, and then went to more of a darker character with the biker gimmick. Sean O'Haire was a monster. The guy was a beast. I don't necessarily remember him so much from that time, but his time with Roddy Piper when he first came to SmackDown. I think that was 02, 03. I thought that they kind of dropped the ball with him, to be honest.
I agree. Yeah, because that's what I remember from him too. Because I like you, I didn't remember him being a part of the invasion really in any prominent role.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you, I remember him with Roddy Piper, and I think that was honestly pretty much it.
That was the time.
Yeah.
And for anybody to put people with Roddy Piper, I mean, they had plans. There was some sort of idea behind that. They wouldn't just put Piper with anybody. So
exactly. Yeah, he had the look. He had the athleticism. It's really just one of those things we'll never know. But and Chuck Palumbo, like you said, anybody that can bounce back from Billy and Chuck, and because he had a brief, brush with main event. Oh, maybe not main event, but I remember he was a pretty prominent figure on SmackDown for a little bit when he was that biker guy.
Yeah, he was with Tori. He did a whole thing with Tori Wilson, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Jamie Noble Jamie Noble, Chuck Palumbo, and Tori Wilson. I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. That whole era. I think that was the Batista era.
Yep.
Kind of time. So a lot of competition on the main event during that time as well. But yeah, as far as this match itself versus the APA, it was fine. I mean, it wasn't it was an APA match. I mean, it had a tough time keeping my attention personally. Pretty rugged. It was pretty much O'Hare and Palumbo dominating the match for like 98% of it, and then at the end, Bradshaw hits a clothesline of hell for the win. So APA wins here, and at this point, WWF is 3-0 in the tally. What did you think about this match?
Definitely a different sight to see APA kind of being destroyed.
Yeah.
But in my head, as a wrestling fan for so long, you kind of know where that's going to go. We're going to bounce back towards the end of the match.
Exactly.
But listen, you give these four guys, you give the APA 7 minutes to go do a match. You know what you're getting with the APA. You're getting high intensity. You're getting an aggressive, hard-hitting match. You got the strength of Farouk. You got, the aggressiveness from JBL or Bradshaw at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the stiffness in the ring. I enjoyed the match just because I was a big fan of the APA. Another team with great chemistry.
Yep. Because at this point they've been teaming for years, at least like 3 or 4 years at this point.
Yeah, and another team that can get over any gimmick. You put them with the Undertaker, and then you do this. And I was a fan of it, but it's definitely
JBL a few years later.
Exactly. But to see the APA take out champions, like you said, they were put out as predominantly the locker room leaders, the top guys at the time. Mm-hmm. So it all just made sense, but decent match in my opinion.
Yeah, just 4 big dudes hitting each other hard, and I can only be so bad in the end.
Exactly.
But we go from big dudes to littler dudes. We have X-Pac versus Billy Kidman. It's another champ versus champ match. We have the cruiserweight champion versus the light heavyweight champion. So I like to ask this to everybody that comes on for an X Factor episode. What were your thoughts on X Factor, the stable?
You know what? It was unique.
that is a word for it.
Yeah, unique.
They gave you everything you ever wanted, and they never gave it back.
Exactly. It's kind of one of those things where you don't expect that to be what it is, but you enjoy it. In a sense.
Yeah. It was much more short-lived than I remember because they had X-Pac, Albert, and Just Incredible, and now we have Just Incredible joining the Alliance, and now it's just X-Pac and Albert. So it was much. I guess that's why they kind of get joked on a lot, is because they really had not a lot of impact in the grand scheme of things.
Well, the thing is also because at this time you had bigger stables, and those stables are more prominent on the shows. So anything smaller than that was kind of like, it wasn't taken seriously, just because you're looking at the NWO or you're looking at somebody else, DX, for example. You really want to go there.
Right.
But there's different stables, different teams that are kind of taking that view away. So kind of overlooked.
Yeah, especially during the whole invasion when it's basically 2 big stables facing each other, so it's easy to get kind of lost.
Exactly. It's giving everybody a place on the card of the show.
Yeah, big or small, everybody's included. The match itself was pretty solid. I think these guys had pretty good chemistry together. Yep. Really sick spot with X-Pac catching Billy Kidman out of the air with an X Factor. I was really shocked that only got a 2 count because that would have been a finish any other night. But ultimately, Kidman gets the win with the shooting star splash. Really, when I was watching back then, I had never seen a shooting star splash. Shooting star press. Shooting star press. I mean, that sounded weird.
It changes.
Yeah, exactly. But But man, after seeing so many other people do it over the years, Billy Kidman has one of like the most awkward looking shooting star presses I've ever seen.
He does. It's like a quick, like, I don't know. It's a little.
It's all business.
It's all business, exactly.
No flash.
It's the best way to put it. You put Matt Seidel or Evan Ward in there, getting
a double shooting star press.
Yeah, like a 5-star press, whatever you want.
Exactly. What'd you think about the match here?
You know what? I was a fan of Billy Kidman in WCW. I was a fan of X-Pac wherever he went, whether that was WCW or WWF. Huge fan of both. I was really high on the cruiserweight action. They didn't really label it as the cruiserweight action then. It was more like a high-flying style for both. They didn't really label it as cruiserweights. I don't know if then did they have the cruiserweight title at that time?
So here, Billy Kidman is the cruiserweight champion, but that's kind of painted as like a WCW title.
Yeah, it was for WCW. They didn't have one for WWE or WWF.
Well, they had the light heavyweight title. That was beyond an afterthought.
Yep.
But ultimately, they end up bringing over the cruiserweight title to replace the light heavyweight title.
Yep.
And there was like a period in like 2002, 2003, where every pay-per-view that had SmackDown on it would have an awesome cruiserweight match. You know, Billy Kidman, Jamie Noble when he comes, Tajiri, Rey Mysterio.
Exactly. And then they threw in Matt Hardy at a point, and they had the whole, I don't know.
One of my biggest pops I've ever had watching wrestling is when Rey Mysterio beat Matt Hardy for the cruiserweight title in like 2003.
Yep.
Like however old I was, 12 years old at the time, I was pumped for that. So
I remember at WrestleMania 9, I think it was 19. 19. They were the opening match of the show, the cruiserweight title, and Matt Hardy retained. I thought Mysterio was taking it. I was so upset.
Yeah, that was crazy, but got a little bit to go there before the cruiserweight kind of division is established. I guess it's after the draft.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way SmackDown differentiated itself was with that cruiserweight title. But this next match was not a cruiserweight match. Raven versus William Regal. A match that was added last minute. I guess they set it up on Heat. I didn't watch the Heat before this. I don't know. But yeah, it was kind of to say it was a clash of styles would be an understatement. Like I said, it was a late edition, so there wasn't a lot of heat to the feud, and the crowd didn't really care. So I think that kind of hurt this match a little bit. Technically, it was fine, but it was kind of boring. I think the crowd energy definitely hurt it. The biggest pop was actually when Taz interfered towards the end of it, gave Regal an exploder suplex, and then Raven hits his Raven Effect DDT for the win. Personally, I think this match is really added to make the tally even at the end of the show. But I don't know. What do you think of it?
I kind of have to agree with you there. I didn't really see the necessity of adding this match, especially because they're so unique in their styles. They're completely different with their styles. So throwing this match together last minute kind of doesn't give you that opportunity to kind of plan a good match. Just throw it together when they're complete opposite styles. You have Raven, who's more of a, stiffer, more extreme kind of
hardcore based.
And you have William Regal, who's more technical, aggressive in a way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely unique match. I kind of was feeling a William Regal win, if I'm being honest. But like you said, this was a way to kind of tally up things. Throw Taz in there. Maybe I don't even know if that was supposed to happen, or because they felt match was doing poorly, they threw Taz out there.
Yeah, that's a big possibility.
Liven up the crowd.
Yeah, Taz hasn't gotten a pop like that since he debuted in Madison Square Garden.
Exactly.
It's crazy. That match was what it was, and the next match was kind of a similar theme to it. A 6-man tag. So you have the Big Show, Billy Gunn, and Albert versus the team of Sean Stasiak, Hugh Morris, and Canyon. So I was very caught off guard when the WCW guys came out. They came out to like a remix of Mr. Perfect's theme song.
Yeah.
Do you know anything? Maybe that was just a thing for the network, or was that like one of their theme songs in WCW? Do you know?
I honestly don't remember. I know the network, they kind of changed things up. Like I know at one point they took out Trish Stratus' theme song. They put some generic thing. So there was some times where I'm like, that's not what I remember watching when I watched it live or when I had the DVD.
Oh man,
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it infuriates me because on the pay-per-views they do have Uncle Cracker for X Factor, but on the Raws and SmackDowns they replaced it with some generic, like almost sounds like it kind of song. So it really takes the experience away from me there.
It does. It does.
Man, yeah, this match was what it was. I mean, it was just another match that was kind of thrown together. A big meat chant when Sean Stasiak came in, which made me laugh my ass off. Were you a big meat fan?
I wasn't, to be honest with you.
Just like everybody else.
Yep.
Man, that's crazy. But kind of a goofy finish to this match. So Billy Gunn's going for the one and only, which is like a sleeper slam, going for it on Hugh Morris. Sean Stasiak hits the DDT, and then Hugh Morris kind of falls on him. But both Hugh Morris and Sean Stasiak are like they don't know who's legal. So it's kind of an awkward finish. WCW gets the win here ultimately. But my favorite part of the match is the post-match beatdown by the WWF guys. I mean, the choke slams that Big Show was throwing out, because he took Hugh Morris, who has got to be at least 300 pounds.
Exactly.
And he picks him up with one hand and slams him like a basketball, which is insane. But yeah, man, what are your thoughts on all this?
I wasn't really a fan of this match just because it was kind of like you said, thrown together. You have Big Show, Albert, and Billy Gunn on one end. Kind of know what you're getting with those guys. Sean Stasiak, Hugh Morris, even Chris Canyon. You're not really sure. They weren't as well known. They were known in their respective companies, but you put them against people like Billy Gunn and Big Show. Albert, not so at that time, but people who were seriously established in WWF. It kind of just threw me off a little bit. It was one of the shorter matches of the entire night, which was...
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. But you expect that with the size of the guys in the ring.
Yeah, it's pretty much all the hosses in one match.
Exactly. So that's kind of why I was really kind of turned off from it, because you kind of know what you're getting. It's just a bunch of big guys in the ring. They're going to throw themselves at each other until someone gets pinned. But definitely the post-match scene that you're talking about, choke slams. I mean, that was the pop of the entire story. So,
of course.
Yeah.
And Big Show at this point is still trying to get over his alley-oop finisher.
Yep.
That power bomb into a facebuster. And,
that was my favorite move in the video game.
See, in a video game, it looks pretty good because it's so exaggerated.
Yes.
But it always looks kind of... I don't know. I was always a bigger fan of the choke slam for Big Show, in my opinion, or even the final cut.
Yeah, watching it live, no, choke slam.
Yeah, every day. But then after this, we have a backstage segment with Shane and Booker T. And I only bring this up because this is the point. You know, all these matches we've covered, and they're just now bringing up how Chavo beat Scotty 2 Hotty on Heat. And so technically that brings the tally to 4-3. With WCW in the lead, I believe. So, but after this, Taz versus Tajiri. Now, if we were talking about this match like 3 years ago in ECW, would have been a banger.
Yep.
But this match is just kind of there for me. There's some continuity here because Tajiri at this point is the assistant of Regal, who is the commissioner, and then Taz interfered, took out Regal in his match, and now Tajiri's kind of getting revenge on for Taz attacking Regal earlier. But yeah, 2 gold mines from ECW that ultimately didn't really reach their potential, in my opinion, here. But this match, While it was kind of short, I enjoyed it for what it was. And the finish comes with Tajiri green misting Taz, the old dreaded green mist, followed by a buzzsaw kick for the win here. Yeah, like I said, for what it was, I was fine with it. What about you?
This was one of the best ways I can describe WWE's writing team, or whatever we want to say, kind of stretching out a story as much as they possibly can. You have Taz interfere earlier with Raven and William Regal, costing Regal the match. Now you have this match that's kind of thrown together, where you can use it to the benefit of the show to add another tally onto one side. But you also continue a storyline that was not necessarily a fan favorite. Like we spoke about, we didn't really care about the Raven William Regal match, but now we have another match that ties into that, can kind of help raise that storyline in a sense. So Tajiri, probably one of my favorite superstars who never spoke a word of English. I never knew what he was saying. And he was so fluent in the ring where I didn't have to hear him speak in order to be a fan of him.
He still had that charisma about him.
Yeah, the charisma, exactly. We saw it with Eddie Guerrero over the years. We saw it with different people. Then you see that heel side of him too. So he kind of played, all the bases covered. So I was really a big fan of Tajiri. Taz, you kind of knew what you were getting with Taz. It's Taz.
It's jumpsuit Taz.
Exactly. But definitely to see Tajiri get the win over Taz, like I said, tying into that Regal match earlier, getting the revenge, like you said, that's kind of what made it a little entertaining for me, just to see him get the revenge. But that was pretty much what it was.
Yeah, and it amazes me, the mist, because as a kid, it was just all magic to me. It's like, oh, he just conjures this mist up from his stomach and then spits it out his mouth. But I was watching this match, and I was like, when the fuck did he put the mist in his mouth? So I rewind it. It was like 2 minutes before the finish. So this whole time, Tajiri's getting suplexed. He's kicking. He's doing the tarantula. He's all this with, I don't know, it's like a packet in his mouth, or does he just drink some green fluid? I don't know what it was, but I was impressed that Tajiri was able to not spit up the mist during this match.
You know what's funny? I never ever thought to look back to see when Tajiri, or even Asuka, who does it today, to see when they put it in their mouth, or if they have it the whole time. Or I'm like you said, magic. So I never actually looked back to see when they do this. That's actually pretty cool. You did that. Find out.
I usually don't. But I was just curious in this instance, and it's funny because you can kind of see some green on his hand tape. Yeah, like that last few minutes of the match. So, but I didn't notice it my first watch, so I guess that's all that matters. Pretty seamless. But yeah, it's like you said, that's like kind of like a couple matches in a row where it's just like not a huge amount of story, other than it just happened to be WWF versus WCW, ECW. So it was at this point in the show, everything was kind of like blending together. For me. I think ultimately that maybe made the show overall suffer a little bit, even though it might not be technically bad. Just not a lot of story outside of the inaugural brawl that comes later. But I say that, and we have this next match, Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy for the Hardcore Championship. Now, this kind of contradicts what I was just saying, because there wasn't a lot of story to this match, but it was fucking amazing anyways. Whereas, a Hardcore Championship, generally that's like the throwaway match of the show. But to me, this is the match of the night for me. I mean, you can see it on paper. Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy in 2001. You know there's going to be an amazing match, hardcore match. Got crazy spots with Jeff falling off that 20-foot ladder onto the ramp. You got Rob Van Dam hitting the Van Daminator on Hardy, knocking him off the stage. But yeah, when I knew this show was coming up, I knew this was the match I was looking forward to, and it did not disappoint at all. Ultimately, Rob Van Dam gets the win here and wins the hardcore title. So that really builds RVD immediately, because this is really his coming out party as far as wrestling in front of a WWF audience. And I think he really impressed. He impressed me, and I'm sure he impressed a lot of people in the back with this match.
See, Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy, to me, honestly, doesn't need a storyline. You see it on paper, and you're interested. I I spoke to Rob Van Dam a few months ago. I did an interview with him, and I kind of spoke about this in a sense where Rob Van Dam was a huge star in ECW. At this time, nobody was really like they were aware of his ability, but it wasn't what it became. You know what I mean? They were kind of grooming him to be WWE's version of Rob Van Dam. The whole effing show, I guess.
Yeah.
These two on paper, any day of the week, I'm all in, make it the main event. Because the first match of the show, I don't care, I'm watching it.
Exactly, yep.
Similar styles, very unique way of executing. So that kind of contradicts what I just said, similar style, because they just do it so differently, but so perfectly. And it's for the hardcore title, so there's something behind it. There's a reason why this match happened, you know?
There's stakes.
Exactly. Rob Van Dam getting the win over Jeff Hardy, brilliant in my opinion. The spots that you spoke about, Van Daminator, for example, it's a pop every time.
Yeah, amazing. And I think not only for Rob Van Dam, but for Jeff Hardy, because this is, pretty fresh off the Hardy Boys. I mean, they're still a team, I guess, at this point, but they're both kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, they were starting to transition him. But this match being one of the longest ones in the entire show, they give him that time for a reason. You know, it's not the main event, but here's, a little less than 15 minutes. Go do your thing.
Exactly. It shows confidence in both these guys.
Exactly. They knew what they were getting.
Yeah. And then Rob Van Dam would go on to, have a good amount of success for WWE. I think he would even challenge Triple H for the world title like within a year. Jeff Hardy has that match with Undertaker in a few months, I guess, maybe a little longer than that. But yeah, both these guys showed out in this match, and I think both were rewarded after it based on their performance. So if you anybody listening, if you want to just watch one match from this show, this is definitely the one. It's definitely a fun watch.
Yes, even if you want to watch two people really that people really know today, as everybody knows Rob Van Dam, everybody knows Jeff Hardy. If you want to see them really fighting to become where they are today, how they got here, that's definitely a great match to watch.
Yeah, and arguably both of them are their physical prime, arguably, for both these guys. But I have to correct myself. I said that was the match that you need to watch, but it's actually the next match. Brawl and Panties. Trish and Lita versus Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler.
Does it get any better?
What's that?
Does it get any better than this?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It was watching this in 2020 is interesting to say the least. Very, it's crazy to say, but this match probably had one of the longest builds of any match on this show, with a lot of cringy promos and other segments. I think earlier there was a segment where Tori and Stacy were backstage talking to each other, and Tori was like, "They're never gonna see my voluptuous breasts." Oh, shut up.
If you look back, at the way that they were trained to do what they did, that's how they were told to do that. When we look at it today, it's the best way to say it, as non-negative as it possibly could be. It's history. We had to go through that to get to where we are today. So it is what it is, and it worked at the time. Yeah.
I mean, the crowd loved it. I mean, the audience watching at home loved it. It was like you said, it was the times. That's what people. That's the world we lived in.
Now they're all pretty much Hall of Famers.
Yeah, exactly. They're all able to go on and have great careers, and they're both still. I don't know if they're all. I don't think they're wrestling, any of them, but they have other aspirations and things they were able to transition from wrestling. Whether it's I think Trish has a yoga program, and Tori and Stacey are doing their own thing. So good stuff later in their careers. But this match was, as far as a brawl and panties match goes, I can't think of a better one. Can you?
No, I can't. The only thing that comes close would probably be the one at WrestleMania 19 or 20, I think it was.
Was it the Miller Lite girls?
Yeah, it was the Miller Lite girls and like Tori and Stacy, and then they turned on each other. And the whole
Man,
thing.
that's long-term booking.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, Trish and Lita get the win here. As JR said, by taking off the opponent's clothes and showing their unmentionables. God damn it, JR. Some things never change.
Seriously. Some of the things I've heard him say this year alone. Like, man.
That guy, JR, I mean, let the man, he's all hopped up on Blue Chew. He just wants to stop on Mudhole and somebody and walk him dry.
He's still one of the greatest of all time.
I love JR. He's one of my favorites.
Yep.
But man, that brings us to the main event. We have the inaugural Brawl, which is a 5-on-5, one fall to a finish match. So we have Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, and Kane versus DDP, Booker T, Rhino, and the Dudley Boys. I'm watching this match and I'm seeing who's on each side of the equation, and I'm almost like, man, what if they just like made this the end of the invasion? Because it seemed to have much more of the WWF versus WCW, ECW feel than what would happen at Survivor Series later in the year. When they had like Shane McMahon on WCW, and WCW, ECW was Shane McMahon, Kurt Angle, Stone Cold, and then you have Booker T and RVD. So it was like really, by the end of it, it was all like, all right, can we just finish this shit already?
Yeah, I didn't really like the back and forth, like people swapping different sides. Maybe one, like if you leave it as like Stone Cold, kind of like some other excitement to it, but switching so many names and kind of they played it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, like you said, if it was just Stone Cold, because even, especially when you factor in, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but after this pay-per-view, you move on to Stone Cold versus Kurt Angle. They have a whole program that spans like several months, and then all of a sudden you have Kurt Angle just switching sides. Like it's all. Yeah. The invasion, it started out okay, but when we get to things like that, it gets very contrived and not a lot of continuity. And I think ultimately, when people shit all over the invasion, I think that's kind of the reason why.
Yeah.
This match, as far as the match itself, it was fine. I mean, it was a 10-man match, so it's gonna be kind of clusterfucky by nature.
Yep.
But for what they were able to do, I mean, you had a ton of talent in this match. I mean, the guys I just named, they're all Hall of Famers or should be Hall of Famers at some point. So, a pretty good match for a 5-on-5 match. The end comes when there's a bunch of chaos. You got DDP and Undertaker fighting in the crowd. You got people getting taken out through the announce table and through other tables, and ultimately you're left with Kurt Angle and Booker T in the ring. Kurt Angle has Booker T in an ankle lock, but that damn Stone Cold Steve Austin, that damn Texas Rattlesnake, gets you every time.
Yep.
Kicks Kurt Angle in the head, gives him a stunner, and allows Booker T to get the win for the team of the Alliance, and bringing the overall show tally to 6-5 in favor of the Alliance. So definitely a major turning point in the storyline. But yeah, what'd you think about it?
I expected something like this to happen, to be honest with you. Just because if it was to end there, like it wouldn't make sense. Like,
right,
you have WCW and ECW win, or you have WWF win. The only thing I could see happening that would make sense if they were going to end it that night, you have WWF win, and now they win 6-5, and WCW and WCW is done. Now everything's under the WWF umbrella. But you have to think of who's writing these storylines, who's producing them. They think long term. So I kind of thought that something like this was going to happen. But I thought more it was going to come from the Alliance side. Or maybe we see like Booker T because he was the heavyweight champion. Maybe not that time, but he held it at one point, and he wanted to kind of transition over to the WWE side. He turns on his team, and now he's a WWE guy or WWF.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of where I thought where it was going to go. But Stone Cold turning makes so much sense, just because if you look at where Stone Cold came from WCW. It was let go by Bischoff.
Mm-hmm.
So there is history there. It does make sense. To kind of like go back, kind of right the wrong in a sense, I guess. But I don't think there could have been anybody else to pull this off the way they did. Stone Cold was a top guy. So,
and WCW needed star power at this point because he had DDP and Booker T, and then it was just the cast along with them. So
if you look at these names on paper, you're like, wow, how did the WWF team lose?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's Stone Cold, man. Get you every time. But yeah, I feel like they had like you were saying, in terms of long-term storytelling, I'm sure they had a vision of a Survivor Series match being the kind of culmination of everything.
Yep.
So I'm sure they were still in that mindset during this match, and this is really not the end of the war. It was just kind of a pivot point. So yeah, I didn't hate Stone Cold switching, but like you said, when it came like to Kurt Angle, and then you have Tess switching for no reason, like silly shit like that, it got a little convoluted, but it was what it was. I mean, it's fun to kind of go back and watch this stuff and kind of see what they did right, what they did wrong, what they could have done.
Well, my favorite part is too, like if you think about where all these guys, for example, just this match alone, the 10 men in this match, where they went with their careers and where they are today. I mean, Booker T, the Dudley Boys, DDP, Rhino. This is where they came into WWE.
Yeah.
So to see, that kind of transition over to the big stage, sort of say, it's kind of really cool, I guess. Like for anyone who wants to watch these guys, where they actually broke into WWE, where it wasn't necessarily, we're the competition. Now we're all part of it. This is a great part of history.
Yeah, agreed.
Despite how we think about how it was executed or not.
Yeah. Just like you said, seeing guys like Rhino in the main event, it's really cool to see it because I think he gets injured at some point during this year, and that kind of halts a lot of his momentum. Seeing him, seeing DDP get a chance to shine, Booker T. They had a pretty good. Obviously they could have had more if logistics were able to allow it, like the Goldbergs and Hogan's and Flairs and all that. But for what they had, I think they were definitely able to maximize the value of the guys that they had.
I look at it like this: if we had Goldberg at that time, if we had Sting at that time, how many wonderful WrestleMania matches we have not had over the last few years? Goldberg and Lesnar, Goldberg and Braun Strowman, Goldberg and Kevin. I don't even know how many matches we had with Goldberg.
You had that classic Goldberg versus Braun Strowman match.
Yep, but what about the classic Super Showdown match?
Ooh, man, barn burner.
Yep.
When you put it that way,
exactly.
It's good that maybe he should just stay away forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that pretty much brings the show to a close. If you had to give this show a rating out of 10, what do you think you would give it?
Out of 10. Honestly, I'd give it like a 6.5, 7.
Yeah. I'll probably say the same, just being generous. Because you have, like this main event was solid. You have Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy. Otherwise, I mean, just a lot of whatever on this show. I think, if you put yourself in the mindset or in the shoes of watching this in 2001, when WCW is still pretty fresh in everybody's mind,
exactly.
and the possibilities in people's minds at this time, like, what what if Goldberg interferes in the main event and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of anticipation building up in the audience, and you can kind of hear that. The crowd was pretty hot for a lot of the show. Maybe save a couple matches here and there.
Yep.
But there was a good energy during this time, and while there was maybe some storyline hiccups, I think ultimately it was still a fun watch.
I think this pay-per-view, it really was based upon the main event of the show. All the other matches, there was some build here and there, but I think all of these other 10 matches besides the main event, they were added to the show just to show that it's a team effort. In my opinion, you have even the referees. I mean, it was shown to show how it really is WWF versus everyone else.
Yep. Yeah. Because I think ultimately the Invasion dominated the entire show. Obviously, Raw, SmackDown, it was the whole thing. Yeah. And I think they kind of took a macro approach to it. And that was just all the WWF guys versus all the WCW, ECW guys. And they didn't really build within that. So that kind of left us with a lot of matches that had no build. I mean, is that what they should have done? Is that not? I mean, we'll never know.
Exactly. But it also gave WWF fans like a visual of who these other people are.
Yeah.
You're like us when we were kids watching this event in 2001, and if you're not too familiar with ECW or WCW, which you probably weren't. You maybe knew WCW, but ECW I think was more of a rated R show.
Yeah, a little more niche.
So not all kids were watching that. But if you didn't know who Raven was, or Billy Kidman, or Chris Kanyon, for example, Sean Stasiak, if you didn't know who these people are, well, guess what? Now you do.
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny watching this because I know, like, at the time watching this, I didn't know who Shane Helms was. I didn't know who Chavo Guerrero was. But, like, watching back, it's like, oh, I didn't know Gregory was there back then. Or, like you said, Canyon, or just little Easter eggs you find every now and then. And this mass of people is fun to watch for sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, any other thoughts on the show in general?
Not really. You know what? We talk about the positives and negatives of this show and the Invasion angle as a whole. It wasn't executed the way that we probably see it happen today. But like I said earlier, it's a part of history, and look where it got us. Over the years, we saw, I guess, the revival of ECW. That was like 05, 06.
Revival is a word.
Yeah. Despite what it was, what happened to it, I mean, they tried to pull it off. So if you compare that to this Invasion angle, it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways to look at it, but overall, it's history, and I guess it just made sense. It was best for business at the time, I guess.
Yeah. There's really nothing else they could have done. They had like you said, they had to strike while the iron was hot. I think they were able to learn from it. We would see kind of similar angles within WWE when it comes like to Survivor Series, and you have Raw versus SmackDown, and you brought up Nexus earlier, which is a similar thing. I guess Retribution, I guess, is kind of similar.
Yeah, that's the latest.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept, right? So, like you said, it's history. It's fun to go back and watch. The good, bad, ugly. But yeah, I had a fun time watching it.
Great show.
Yeah. So, once again, man, thanks for making time. I know you're currently in a camper hanging off a canyon right now. We're running away from bears. So I appreciate you making the time to hop on here and talk about some more wrestling with me.
No, I appreciate you asking me to come on. And anytime I get to talk about wrestling, I'm making the time for it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you have anything else that you wanted to promote?
I have my own wrestling podcast. It's the Angle Podcast. You could follow me on all social media. It's at The Angle Radio. On YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere like that. You can check out theangleradio.com. Everything's there. That's my show.
Awesome. Yeah. I've listened to a few episodes, and I really like it. I only reach out to guys who are entertaining and seem like they know their shit. And I definitely a good listen for anybody listening. The Angle Podcast.
I appreciate it. And I'd love to have you on my show whenever we're able to. When I get back from my trip, I definitely
You said you're kind of coming back after your trip.
Yeah, I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna be back from the trip next week. I'm going full force with a lot of stuff that I have planned. So I want to do a pre-show or something for the events. So if you'd like to be a part of that, I'd love to have you on there.
I'd love to. Just let me know. All right. Well, with that, man, I'll let you get back to whatever state you're traveling to next. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, and have a good night.
Once again, thank you to Joey from the Angle Podcast. Be sure to follow all of his information that he just gave you. You can check out the description of this podcast for all his info, theangleradio.com. You can follow him on Twitter at theangleradio. Really good dude. Like I think I mentioned before, he's traveling all across the country right now, so he's been kind of taking a break from the podcast, but he'll be revving up again here soon. So be sure to check him out. Lots of interviews and other stuff that he does. So with that is all Daddy has for you today. Apronbump.com, Instagram, Twitter at apronbump. Make sure to subscribe. Got a lot of good shit coming for you next week. So why don't you just fucking suck your dog's dick and okay. I need to stop ending shows like this because I feel like it puts a bad taste of cum in everybody's mouth. Anyways, thanks again once for everybody. Once again, thank you for listening. I'm hard.